Aloha, I'm Elena Hugh. Welcome back for another edition of PTC TV, brought to you by PTC'14 Platinum sponsor, Equinix. Now, this is the third of 5 programs specially created for PTC'14. If you missed the first 2 programs, visit ptc.org after the conference to watch the episodes you missed.
Aloha, I'm Sharon Akama. I would like to take a few minutes to acknowledge all of the people who have helped make PTC'14 possible. The PTC staff and volunteers for their efforts to deliver the valuable conference experience you have come to expect from PTC. Our program co-chairs, Francis Pereira, Masaaki Sakamaki, and Joe Weinman, who worked with our program committee throughout the year to bring you this year's impactful program. To our wonderful PTC members, who have made this organization what it is today through their amazing engagement with PTC. I am very grateful to our member-elected Board of Governors and Advisory Council, along with those who serve on the working committees of the Council. Finally, a very special mahalo to the PTC'14 sponsors who make this conference possible. Thank you to Tata Communications for being the PTC'14 Diamond sponsor. Mahalo to you all for making PTC'14 our best conference yet. Aloha.
Mobile traffic has had some interesting impacts to the mobile ecosystem. First and foremost would be mobile network operators. For the longest time, mobile networks tended to be a single application network, and that was voice. This is very similar to the behavior we saw 14 years ago when public ISPs came together in our facilities in order to peer and localize the exchange of traffic with one another in order to make sure that the internet delivered a positive experience. We're now seeing the same thing from the mobile network operators. There's some interesting secondary effects to other members of the mobile ecosystem for very similar reasons. A good example would be social media platforms and advertising platforms that tend to co-locate next to one another in order to serve content as efficiently and quickly as possible. Another good example would be handset OEMs, who will tend to proxy things such as email and other types of popular content in order to make sure the end user has a positive experience.
I'm Ina Fried. I'm a senior editor with Recode.net. I'm here with Bill Barney, who is the CEO of Reliance Globalcom. Now, Reliance Globalcom, people know Reliance as a big Indian company. You're kind of in charge of this stuff outside of India, right?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that Globalcom's really made up of 3 primary companies. The first being Flag, which is the largest privately held submarine cable in the world. Yipes, one of the early leaders in Ethernet technologies here in the United States, and then Vanka, one of the early, what we call value-added resellers in Europe. So 3 very, very powerful assets all under one roof.
And this is a quite new job for you. You've been on it, what, 48 hours now?
It's been, yeah, I guess it's probably almost at 48 right now. Technically, this is really my first 8 hours, but yeah, it's an exciting way to start it out. I can't think of a better place to have your first day than under the palm trees in Hawaii.
So you've been at a different company before, took some time off. What interested you about this opportunity?
Well, I think it's anytime you're thinking about where clouds are headed, to be in the fiber space, to be in the technology space right now, this is probably going to be one of the more interesting 5 to 8 years of the cycle. I think we're redefining how networks are going to be built, and it's a pretty exciting time to be in the space. And also, I think one of the key places is going to be emerging markets, and Flag actually hits virtually 60% of all the emerging markets in the world today. And so it's a very, very exciting asset to really to sink my teeth into and to get out and have some fun with.
And Reliance, obviously, as a company, brings a large experience in one of the largest emerging markets, India. Are there some lessons from what Reliance has done in India that you think, as a company, you guys can bring to the rest of the world?
Well, I mean, you think about telecom, right? In telecom, companies like AT&T or Verizon, they would bring on 10,000, 20,000 subscribers a year. You look at the Indian mobile space, they essentially brought on almost 900 million subscribers over the course of 4 years. So the IT challenges, the technology challenges to do all those things, tremendous capabilities within these companies, and now we're actually going to be able to take those skills and actually bring them out into the rest of the world and take advantage of a lot of the lessons learned there as they've gone through some very, very challenging issues as you start to build these massive companies.
And one of the companies you run is a managed services company.
Yes.
Will that tap that expertise?
Oh, of course it will. Yeah. No, we're right now almost 40% of our employees are in India. We'll continue to grow that base of expertise and tap into the capabilities that they've already built there. So yeah, no, you'll continue to see this as an Indian-run enterprise as well as an international enterprise.
The goal, obviously, though, is to build more of the resources and more of the revenue from outside India. How much of resources today come from that local Indian business, and what's your goal for the company?
Well, no, the company today generates very little business from its parent company. Most of the business is actually generated by its 27 offices around the world and its submarine cable system. So we'll continue to grow the business out of India, but I think our focus will be largely bringing traffic inbound into India for companies that are looking to outsource their capabilities in that environment. If you look at today, of the Fortune 500, almost 150 of them have some sort of their back office, one portion of their back office today in India, and we think that that's going to be a huge market for us to tap.
And is Globalcom right now a big part of Reliance's overall business?
It's depending on how you look at it. It's whether it's revenue or EBITDA or cash flow. It fluctuates between 10 and 15% of the business. It's largely run as a separate subsidiary. It's a Bermuda company. So you really have to think of it as one of many companies within the Reliance Group. They actually have almost 20 enterprises that they run. And in addition to telecom, they're also in power generation. They have infrastructure and they have financial services.
Do you have a goal for where you'd like to take that?
It's day two. I think you'll see that we're going to spend quite a bit of time learning how to grow, and we're actually going to expand our business very heavily into the enterprise space and into the new media space. I think that you'll see that today was a pretty active day on our first day on the job, and I think you'll see that many weeks, the next few weeks, there'll be a lot of announcements around this business as we continue to grow it and make it go faster.
Okay. Well, thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Would you like a quick and easy way to keep track of the conference program and schedule? Download the PTC mobile app and favorite the sessions you'd like to attend. Learn more about PTC'14 sponsors and find out where meeting suites are located. You can do all of this and more. Visit crowd.c/s/1BFQ on your mobile device, or search for PTC Conference in the App Store or Pacific Telecommunications Council in Google Play. PTC'14 is made possible in part by the generosity of the PTC'14 sponsors. Mahalo to PTC'14 Diamond sponsor, Tata Communications. Thank you for all of your support. The keynotes, executive insight roundtables, and topical sessions continue on Tuesday. And ladies, you're invited to attend the PTC Women's Breakfast, sponsored by Paul Hastings. All full conference delegates and delegates holding a one-day registration pass for Tuesday are then invited to attend the Tuesday evening reception, sponsored by the PTC'14 Diamond sponsor, Tata Communications. Please remember to bring your official PTC'14 badge to be admitted to the event. Time now for the day's first keynote panel on business drivers of global network evolution.
Great. Well, thanks, Katz. That was a wonderful presentation. And I think probably the best place is to segue from your last slide. I think one of the things that you said at the very end was carrier cloud is a business opportunity for network service providers. And I guess for Andrew and Mike, maybe to get your take on that, how you guys are positioning as integrating cloud services for your customers, how you're delivering cloud services. Maybe mention a few things about that.
Okay, thanks. So, good morning, everyone. So, I lost my voice not because of last night karaoke, it's because of the work. Okay, so thanks for the question. I think it's a very good presentation from Nakata-san. On the cloud side, at this moment, we have two requirements. One is on the carrier, and the other one is on our enterprise customer. So for our enterprise customer, basically, what they're looking for is another kind of specific QoS and SLA. Namely, the market is pushing us into a direction that a kind of solution and tailor-made. Instead of we give them a full-fledged cloud service, they will buy it and they will follow us around the world. So let's say, for example, we do have a shipping company who's requesting us specifically for some special location, instead of I need the whole world coverage, a normal kind of coverage. And other than that, one very funny thing that they're pushing us to do is we develop a technology and a product called ODVLL. It's on-demand guarantee bandwidth, instead of putting it into the internet only. So this is one sector of the customer in which they're pushing us to launch our service in a different way. For those, another sector, which is talking about the carrier, I think they have their own specific solution. Instead of asking us to give them all the details, basically they're grabbing our cloud service and bundle it by themselves and modify it to fulfill their own customer requirement. So what I can see is that these two streams will still develop and maybe in a faster pace in the coming year.
Mike?
Yeah, I think it was a great setup. I think we have opportunities on both sides. I completely agree we can change the buying model for customers. Provisioning is a nightmare in the networking space, and we get around the local loop problem. We save customers money. We allow ourselves to invest at scale, which has been difficult when you're building private networks, especially for enterprises. We can change to, and you'll see Verizon actually moving forward with usage-based billing models, which in the enterprise networking space is pretty unique. I think everyone's going to end up going down that path, the on-demand path, as you referred to. I think where we want to really take advantage of the opportunity, though, and we talk, at some point, over the top always comes into the conversation. We have a level of visibility into application performance, into security, and to cross-border control that almost nobody else has. And especially in the carrier side, where we've sort of lamented the state of affairs when it comes to over-the-tops pushing us down. I think this is an opportunity for us to give what I like to say is visibility to an enterprise where the WAN is the legacy LAN. Customers used to have things in a data center. They could plug something into a SPAN port. They could watch application performance. They could control security. And now their LAN is 5 different SaaS providers, 3 different cloud providers, offices, mobile endpoints, and their own data centers. The LAN just changed, and we're the ones sitting in the middle of that. That's an opportunity I think we need to take advantage of.
And I mean, Katz, do you see that similar, change in the networks to adopt the cloud services?
As I said, don't limit yourself, and in the enabler's role. But as the ecosystem is changing and expanding, and involving all the IT resources, then that brings back in the original position that we definitely have to enhance our network infrastructures and enhance our network services as well. So this kind of positive kind of ecosystem cycle can be taking place. So that's my kind of message.
What are the biggest changes in corporate networks that have to happen to integrate cloud services? I mean, obviously, you've got lots of customers with a lot of legacy technology, but as you advise them on a migration path towards adopting data center and cloud services, what is that path? What are the biggest changes that need to be made?
I see the as I mentioned, the demand is more diverse now. So in the past, to handle some corporate customer, we have wholesale corporate and others. But in my observation is that we cannot give them just a one or two kind of product. For example, I don't know how you define the, let's say the OTT. Are they your corporate customer or are they your wholesale customer? Sometimes you cannot define. And we gave up in defining some of the customer. Are they carrier in nature or are they corporate in nature? The reason behind is that it only depends on the size. Some of the customer, for example, they would like to use, okay, I try to push my content in a CDN manner. But some of the customer, they may come and saying that, no, I don't need that. I will do my own CDN. So as such, to answer your question quick is that inside, it's just like you got a whole bunch of assets on top of your table. And when a customer comes, for example, your question is the corporate customer, you pick and choose along the line. But of course, all your product and asset, you got to go along with the strategy and also with the direction of the overall growth. So now the need is not only connectivity, of course. They need, as Nagata-san said, they need SI, they need IT, they need IDC, they need cloud, they need connectivities. I think it is no one formula to say that I'm going to do this for my corporate customer, but instead it's a mix and match.
You know, I think first of all, our own OSS BSS model needs to change. You know, I think carriers operate at such scale that innovation is held back less by what our networks look like and more on how we can bill a customer. You know, whether we can provision a particular value proposition to them effectively or not. So there are investments that we're all going to have to make on the OSS BSS side. I think data is another, just going back to that visibility that we have across the WAN, we have to become businesses that are not just focused at layer 3. We have to think about the data going across. We have to think about not only how we use that data for our customers' benefits, but we have to think about how we can leverage the network as a storage and processing point for customers. I was at a customer last week, very large-scale customer that asks the question, why does every lookup that I need to do in country need to come back to my corporate data center? Why can't we put that at your edge? And the more that we do that, I'm convinced that we're going to see new business models, new applications, to your point, be written that take advantage of lower latency and potentially less risk for compliance. But again, for us, that comes back to less technology. We can do these things. It's a question of, you know, can we create a service description and an OSS BSS that takes advantage of the fact that most of this technology is already in the network at some level?
Yes. Jim?
Yes. It's like Verizon, they recently bought the HCAS. And so probably, so not for the, as a kind of wholesale standpoint point of view, but for the, corporate users, it is a really, good thing to have a kind of such a kind of, capability to, from the kind of corporate users point of view. So, because the edge traffic, customers want to control the kind of edge traffic, in the kind of regions and their sites. So, we definitely have to expand our capabilities.
Right. I mean, as network requirements go global, clearly one of the challenges is delivering that service and providing the same end user experience to all the customer sites. I mean, maybe talk about how you put things like NNIs in place and how those are capable of delivering the quality of service or the level of service that your customers require, and maybe some of the challenges that you face in doing so.
So I think in our international arena, in this past, especially in this past 10, 20 years, so the whole economic change. In the past, I think, obviously, I don't want to recap too much the old days, but we always learn from the old days.
Right.
So I think we are going through an evolution. In the past, for example, in a country, you only have one incumbent, or there is a monopoly situation. that carrier, basically, they are representing the country already, almost, okay, representing the country. So no matter how big or how small your country are or your area, so whenever there's a carrier coming in, you have to cooperate because it is a responsibility instead of pure commercial decision. Okay. While we're going through the regulation to around 15 years ago, now you have a choice, and I see that sometimes the cooperation between the carrier is more shifting to can I earn the last juice immediately? There is no, I mean the commercial consideration is more and more. So it's nothing wrong with that. It's a commercial world. We live in the commercial world and we have to cope with it. But having said that, coming to the current stage in the evolution, so I really see that some carrier and operator really need to sharpen our pencil and we need to pick and make a determination who I'm going to cooperate with for the service delivery that you mentioned for two simple reasons. The first one is no one can do everything by themselves. Now, this is the first one. Second, I think with this kind of ecosystem, that is my utopia, the competition in price drop will not be that intense or unnecessary. Let's say, for example, if we go into a country, a deregulating country, so I want to do everything by myself. So from head to tails. If all my peers, everyone is trying to enhance and do everything and offer the customer the same kind of product, so I think the price will drop tremendously. In some situations, we do see that that is an opportunity that I do something that is my best, but however, I earn faster. I don't mind to earn a little bit less, but I cooperate with other carriers to do it.
Right. Mike, do you see the same?
Commercial models have to change. That's all there is to it. You know, no one sitting in this room would be unfamiliar with the economics of the carrier business overall. They're not what they were in the late 90s. So we have to change. You know, and there are a whole host of legacy constructs, to your point about how we interconnect with each other, that don't make sense anymore. That's problem number one. You know, problem number two is, notwithstanding how we interconnect with each other, if we don't come up with products that are different than the ones that we're selling, we're dead. Volumes are up hugely. I doubt it's different for anybody in this room. If it's public, if it's private, if it's cellular, if it's customers connecting to Wi-Fi, if it's DAS systems on buildings, you can't find a metric in which growth isn't significant over the last 24 months. Price, on the other hand, isn't following suit. So we have to change. So whether that's who we do business with and who we create value with, and that's more bilateral than it is necessarily sort of an open, maybe responsibility-driven system, then so be it. But definitely, I think if we're sitting here 2 years from now, we're going to be looking at different strategies of how we work together.
Sure. And Katz, your view?
Yeah, I quite agree. And yes, let me talk about the carrier relations. So the old type of carrier relations, it's more about the voice traffic, kind of exchange. But this is the era of the data traffic. Data traffic will control everything. And, we don't even have to think about how we're going to cooperate each other. And, I personally, compare the telecommunications business to the kind of airline businesses. And I recently personally think that we definitely have to introduce kind of code share type of model, to cooperate each other to make the make use of the an efficient routes and the servers and all together, routers and all together, and that kind of cooperate, and also the like a business partnership, not the kind of buy and sell type of relations. We definitely have to go beyond the kind of buy and sell.
I think, Mike, one of the things you talked about is network flexibility in different billing models and new technologies to deliver the service to the end user. One of the hot topics of the day is like SDN, and I think one of the questions I think Katz proposed it is what is the impact of new technology like SDN on an operator's network business? I mean, how quickly can that be integrated into your network? I mean, is that how far along are we in that pipeline? Is that something that's a reality today at Verizon, or something that you're looking towards integrating in the next 18 months, 2 years?
The first question, I think the first answer you'd have to come up with, what is SDN? You know, and I don't think you could find 3 people that have the same definition. You know, you've got, you know, the crowd that believes that everything is going to be, you know, operations center controlling routing real time, and then even extending that into self-service into a portal somewhere. Other people have a much more modest definition, you know, than what we have today. You know, Verizon, like every other carrier, is looking at the impact of SDN. I think we, like many, believe that it's coming along, but it's not a technology that's going to revolutionize the world in the next 12 months. It'll be taken incrementally, mostly because there's zero tolerance for failure. You know, we just can't afford to go into a mass cutover into a system like that. Having said that, should there be huge opportunity for us? Think about the amount of redundancy and unused capacity in global networks today that in a data center were all solved through virtualization and through optimization at the LAN level. None of that's been applied to the WAN level. Think about the value in being able to, again, collect and manage data and feed that back through for performance as an opportunity to monetize these networks further for application and content originators. Love to be in that world, but we're going to progress, I think, responsibly toward it.
Right. Katz, your view from NTT with respect to SDN?
So, I quite agree with the Mike, and but we definitely have to introduce kind of SDN under the on the kind of open kind of platform architectures. And as I said, like in legacy model or the current kind of business service model is the kind of really dependent on the vendors. All the configurations are decided by the vendors. But once we introduce the kind of open, like software-defined network with the open network architecture, like open flow kind of stuff, so then we get a freedom to choose the kind of vendors, and so that we can minimize the kind of cost, and we simplify the kind of whole and kind of processes. That's the kind of goal for us to introduce SDN.
Yeah, I think SDN will come, but not now. So I think the comparison is many years ago you're using the legacy switch, and now a lot of us is moving to Class 5 already. But having said that, how can we monetize this one? It's yet to tell. I think at this moment our company is testing out the SDN at our edge as a kind of cost saving. How can we deliver this benefit to our customer is yet to tell. But I think it will come.
Now, I know a lot of people in the room are focused on wholesale, and there are a lot of submarine cable providers and people interested in that part of the business. When we start talking about data centers and cloud services, we talk about a change in traffic patterns around the world, really. What do you think that this move towards cloud services and more centralized data centers, what impact will that have on international data traffic? Mike, do you want to start?
I mean, we are super excited about it. Honestly, if you were a carrier like Verizon, I suppose, NTT, many others, the difficulty in competing in the markets goes back to it's the cooperation at the local access level. And to use a sports analogy, we're talking cloud services is skating to where the puck's going. And if the puck's going to centralized locations where we can create great efficiencies through scaled investment, where we can logically provision customers, give them better service, logical turnups, one-day turnarounds instead of months-long implementations, that's a tremendous opportunity for us. We've saved money, customers save money, we have a better experience, we can innovate around business models for charging customers, we get easier collection of information and data, we get to be able to move workloads for them to optimize locations. I can't think of a reason why a shift towards centralized facilities, be it co-location facilities or, in fact, cloud and SaaS providers, in any way is a bad thing for us. I think it's a huge benefit.
Katz?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. Yes, there's a kind of huge opportunity. Yeah. So as I said, that there's a kind of boundary, across the IT resources. But by introducing the cloud, so the boundary is going away. And all vertical model and all horizontal model can be provided, and then so that we can achieve the kind of global optimized kind of model, the service model, and to the customers. That's a kind of challenge, but it's also very exciting for us.
And Andrew, how does it change how you plan the capacity in your network, certainly on international links and things like that?
Yeah, actually, following the question about the data center, which affect the traffic pattern a lot, and also your question talking about how we plan the capacity. Sorry. I see that along the line with the data center traffic pattern, basically there's a centralization and decentralization. The centralization is within the region, you will see several very important centralized IDC center in which the traffic centralizing in. But the customer is also asking you to go to other places so that you can put them on those centralized points. So that's why I'm talking about the centralization of traffic and decentralization of traffic. We have to plan our cable or whatsoever in a very clever way.
I think one other point you talked about was managing OTTs and how you plan for that. One thing I heard yesterday is that increasingly OTTs are trying to differentiate their services by buying quality of service or class of service, particularly in the voice world, like the Skypes of the world. Is that something that you see as class of service becoming a bigger requirement in that area? I don't know, Andrew, your experience?
I think there's not a question anymore. The reason behind is that if we don't do it, the OTT will do it by themselves. Okay, so several years ago, I still remember the first OTT discussion in PTC was 5 years ago. And during that time, we talk about, okay, the OTT is threatening, we worry or whatsoever. Obviously, this generation is gone. So, and especially when we talk about the differentiation, the differences, and also the edge between OTT and also the so-called traditional carrier in the 4 areas. Payment gateway, I don't have, I have, you don't have. Locational based information, I have, you don't have. Network development, I have, you don't have. Other than that level performance, those 4 areas become more and more blurred because the OTT been keep on working on it. So how many apps that they push to your smartphone will not ask you, do you allow me to take your locational information? No, 99%. They will ask you. So that means this is the blur already. So it is not a generation we talk about how we can protect ourselves, but instead, a lot of carriers, including us, we are all embracing the OTT. And talking about the quality, my statement is still the same as my start, is that you don't do it, they will do it themselves. Right. So you better provide the service.
Right.
No, I mean, I agree. They have a lot more control than we would like to think that they do. OTTs are a great thing for consumers, and arguably they're a great thing for us. I mean, they're driving a huge amount of demand, whether it's a video content originator or it's a social networking site, or they're creating demand for network. So we've got to embrace them for many, many reasons. I think we have to focus on what we do well, and something that most OTTs don't have, and that is universal reach. Skype's a great service. We've all, I think, mostly have Skyped with our families when we travel. I put that on my top 5 list of life-changing things I was able to do back when that came out. Is it a great service? From a quality standpoint, it's a walled garden service. When we think of ourselves as carriers, our openness is one of our great advantages. Communications was never supposed to be a walled garden. So we have to think about kind of pulling our boots back on, I think, and sort of addressing some of these spaces. Not to say that OTTs shouldn't be there, but we should be competing vigorously where attributes of universal reach and openness are critical.
Yes.
Yeah, let me make a comment on one thing about developing countries. OTT is a kind of providing, gather the whole traffic, or they gather kind of subscribers. So like in Japan, it's not really developing, but we have the line. It's like explosively the population of subscribers of the line is explosive. It's like 0.5 billion, but they bring in the traffic into the kind of apps, and also in their mobile users in the developing countries and some countries like Asian Pac, and population of mobile users also explosive, and then also they are kind of really dependent on their OTTs and contents. So as a contents provider, they can help. So in some regions, it's their relationship is mutually, supporting together. But also they will see in the future they will be an enemy. So most of the carriers will understand it in the future.
The topic of the session was meant to be business drivers of the global network evolution. I think we've hit a lot of those topics here. I guess for one final question, just as far as maintaining customers and growth and revenue for your businesses, what do you see as the biggest opportunity, say, in the next year before we come back to PTC in 2015? Andrew, do you have a vision on that?
To maintain customer and grow the revenue. I think, obviously, in some situations, you have to take a look at the supply and demand. So as such, it depends on your short-term goal or long-term goal. So if you're talking about the short-term goal, you may have one kind of decision. If you're talking about a medium, long-term goal, you may have another kind of decision. But basically, I think it's not deviated from your pricing, your quality of service. I think these are the two golden rules. But having said that, there are some linge opportunity comes up, no matter in a geographical point of view or in a technological or product point of view. So for example, a lot of people now, we are talking about IPX. Other than that, we are not talking about a specific cloud solution. I think those areas are some of the areas that we may need to focus.
I would 100% agree. I would say that we have two areas that we have to deliver on, aside from the million basic things that we have to do as a large business. One of them is when we talk about cloud, or if it's security, or if it's networking, we have to make those things work together. That's the reason you buy from a company like ours. The second thing we have to do is pivot our companies at the same time toward end-state solutions, not towards simply being an arms merchant of underlying technology. And to that, we look for big transformational spaces. In the U.S. in particular, healthcare is a great example. It's 20% of the U.S. economy. It grows at a multiplier of GDP, and it's undergoing massive transformation, both at a regulatory level and a technology level. Companies like Verizon that have a consumer and enterprise approach have a great opportunity to influence that, not just to make money, but also be relevant to society. So we are hopefully going to deliver on those two things. When we sit down 12 months later, hopefully some of the real movement in cloud and things like healthcare will have materialized.
Katz, your last.
Yeah, I quite agree. And as the Verizon, so we can aim at the packaging the whole kind of services and vertically, including everything, and then to customize the services. But at the same time, each piece of the kind of services should be kind of commoditized, as I said. So where is the value services? So probably as the Mike clearly said that solutions and the customized whole kind of package tuned to the customer's needs. That is the our kind of value.
All right. Well, I see that our time is up. I'd like to thank each of our panelists for your contribution today, and please join me in thanking them. Thanks. Thank you.
A very special mahalo to the 2014 PTC Board of Governors for their year-round leadership and support. PTC'14 is made possible in part by the generosity of the PTC'14 sponsors. Mahalo to each of the PTC'14 Platinum sponsors. Thank you for all of your support.
Trident is a $400 million fibre optic communication system linking Perth in Western Australia through the Northwest Shelf to Jakarta and onto Singapore, facilitating voice, business traffic and internet connection into Australia, as well as telecommunication services to the oil, gas and mining sectors.
The project is unique in several ways. First of all, our international partners, which are Matrix and Fujitsu. With the Matrix acquisition comes the Indonesian licenses and permits, which are very hard to obtain. And so Trident's really already got those in the bag, giving us a strong competitive advantage.
The strength of Trident has been speed, and Fujitsu and Trident together are moving at a rapid pace to mobilise the project into environmental planning, route surveys, marine studies. And this is the value of the partnership.
I think it's a great opportunity for Trident, for Fujitsu, for Western Australia and for Australia overall. It's a great program of work.
Trident, now connecting with business.
Now we'll hear a keynote case study review led by John Finney, CCO of O3B Networks, and Jules Ma, CEO of Telecom Cook Islands Limited, about fiber speed satellite reach for the Pacific region.
Good morning.
Kia ora ana.
So, just by way of short introductions, I'm John Finney, I'm the CCO for O3B Networks.
I'm Jules Ma, Chief Executive Officer, Telecom Cook Islands.
Just to forewarn you, neither Jules nor I have ever done a joint presentation before, so nobody in this room knows what's going to happen for the next 20 minutes. Could be great, could be bad.
Including us.
Yeah, including us. This is a milestone moment. This is the first time in public that we, as O3B, are going to reveal the full performance of our first 4 satellites in operation. And we're going to do that with the support of Jules Ma from Telecom Cook Islands. Since Jules was the very first customer that signed with O3B, he's the very first customer to pilot and trial O3B, and he'll be the very first customer worldwide, in fact, and therefore in this region, to go live with O3B services just a couple of weeks from now. So without further ado, I like this picture because when I look at this picture, I see a gap. I see a gap between the user's aspirations and their reality. A gap between where they want to go, how fast they want to travel, what experience they're trying to get to, and the reality of the transport that they have. We see the same gap in the satellite industry. We see a gap that is extremely wide in relation to the services that users want to enjoy on the web, with the devices that they have, with the applications that they want to run on those devices, and the capability of today's satellites, geosynchronous satellites. And we want to try and bridge that gap. We want to try and close that gap in a new way. We had considered to evolve current satellites as an option towards the type of services, the type of transport layer that we think the satellite industry should be able to provide. But we don't think that current satellites are able to evolve and go far enough to meet the demands that end users will face in this region for the next 10 years. So we think you have to build something new, an entirely new architecture. And that concept, that thinking, is what started O3B as a company. From the very beginning, we took around this simple question: what if we change the status quo? What if we change the way that it currently is? What happens if you have access to very large amounts of bandwidth that's extremely affordable and has exceptionally low latency? What applications would you enable in the network? What new services would you be able to run? What new revenue streams would you be able to create? What customers would you be able to retain? How would you be able to lower your operational costs? We took this question everywhere. In fact, this slide is legend within O3B. It's mandatory for every salesperson, it's my policy, to use this slide to evoke a response. If you have it, what will you do with it? And that's where I first met Jules, 5 years ago at least. And the difference here is I never got to this slide with Jules. Jules came to me and said, we have a broadband vision. We're on a mission. Perhaps you could just remind us, Jules, what the importance of that mission was.
For the Cook Islands, I arrived as Chief Executive about 5 years ago. I first arrived in the Cook Islands actually 60 years ago when I was born. My father was a radio operator back in the days of Morse code and the like. But when I returned to work as chief executive about 5 years ago, I got a very strong message from customers there that we actually want to build our nation, and to do that, we've got to have the best technology. We've got to have the best technologies at the right price, and we need to do that because we've got a diverse and dispersed community of 15 islands, 12 of them are inhabited. We've got a tiny population, 15,000 people, but they are demanding, they are well educated, they have aspirations. So we looked for a solution, and our customers were saying, come on, Jules, build a cable, bring a cable in. That'll give us the solution. Unfortunately, cable was too expensive. We wanted to actually have 100% reach. Cable could reach our main island and perhaps one other, but we've got 12 we want to reach. So we want to get to all of our people, and we want to do it with a quality service, without compromise, to give them as good as New Zealand, because that's actually who our customers compare us to. And we want to do it at an affordable price. We're not the wealthiest country in the world, and we're not the poorest either, but we've got to be able to do it at an affordable price. That's where we sat. So O3B, when we started having the conversation about this technology, what it could do, it to me just seemed like the answer to our prayers. We could actually cover with one beam 90% of our population across 6 islands. The prices they were talking about sounded fantastic compared to what we were paying on Geo. The latency, the applications. I'll go on a bit, John, I better let you.
We're going to the video now.
Yes, well, actually, this is the time I think we should just let our customers speak for us.
I think O3B will provide a benefit to all of the islands that we have. The ability of small businesses, in particular in the outer islands, to be able to sell a product or to be able to promote itself to a much, much wider market, the global market, than has previously been possible through the use of high-speed broadband, is going to be a huge impact on the economy of the country.
The effect of slow speed when you're sitting in an office and you're waiting for information to come through, especially files, it's very frustrating. I think it's just human nature that we can't just wait long enough, especially when you know that somewhere else they can get the speed like lightning. It helps our children, I hope, to realize that you don't have to go to New Zealand, you don't have to travel overseas to get all these gadgets and be part of the network of the world, especially the social media. You can be anywhere in the Cook Islands, whether it's the Northern Group or the Southern Group or even Rarotonga.
I think the use of video conferencing during surgical procedures would be a great potential to have in the Cooks. I think when doctors are able to link up with a counterpart in New Zealand just to guide them through certain procedures, and for those guys in New Zealand to actually see what's going on, I think the potential for us to actually do a lot would be great. It would definitely reduce on the number of referrals that will be made.
Cook Islands tourism industry is the largest part of our economy. It provides around 75% of the GDP, so it's very much, pretty much the only game in town. And tourism is absolutely reliant on connectivity for both visitors being able to access their lives, which they have online, and also for us to be able to distribute our tourism product and take our information to the world. The biggest issue that we've had with our current internet service is because of the geosynchronous satellites and latency, because of the type of booking system, the financial transactions that take place over there, our ability to interact with other airline reservation systems, the turnaround time because of latency on those transactions creates us problems. So with O3B, we expect to overcome the latency issues, and in fact we will probably end up hosting most of our applications, in fact, offshore, because we'll be able to access them at higher speed from here.
So we run 3 hotels, and we're going through the expansion mode. Having the greater speed, less latency is just so important to us. This extra bandwidth that O3B are presenting to us through telecom, it's just going to give our business a huge lift. It's going to give the tourism industry a huge lift. So as far as Pacific Resort Hotel Group, look, it's just going to be fantastic. Somebody was saying to me recently that they say, imagine you were in Hawaii because you're getting the same internet speed as if you were in the fiber optic environment in Hawaii. Other people have told me that they were sitting in the control room and watching 2 movies at the same time while they were talking to friends on Facebook and downloading their email. So that's exciting stuff. We're really looking forward to it coming.
And island to island, when we ask the question, what would happen if we changed the status quo? This is the reaction that we get from everyone. And that's what made us extremely clear about this is a problem that we should solve by any means. And we have a lot of passion for that vision. And the vision effectively is, regardless of where you are in the Pacific Islands, you should have the same performance and capability as any terrestrial network. And that's closing the gap between the performance of satellites today and how they could be to satisfy users with all of the applications that they want to run on the network. And so we looked at every possibility, including fiber, incidentally. And we decided on a system that must have a few characteristics. Firstly, it must have unlimited spectrum. It must be extremely scalable. We can add to the constellation as and when demand increases. It must have redundancy, particularly when we looked at this region, 14 time zones. Fiber is an almost impossible business case to make, but fiber with redundancy, in our opinion, will never happen. So we wanted to make sure we had a system that had at least that. We wanted to make sure that the quality of experience matched fiber. This is crucially important, that as we became more successful, our assets became cheaper and cheaper. Our cost base came down, and we were able to follow the natural trend of bandwidth pricing. And we started, most importantly, from a very low cost base, so an increase in the service quality and a significant reduction in cost. And that's how we came to be. That's how we came to the inherent design of O3b, which is medium Earth orbit constellation, very significant amounts of throughput over satellite, the highest in the industry, the lowest in terms of latency with 150 millisecond average round trip time. And that's why we designed the system the way that we did. And subsequently, we went on to design our flagship trunking product. So it's a high-capacity trunking circuit, very simply, high bandwidth, low latency, low cost. And the rate of adoption in the Pacific region has been staggering. Today, we have over 3.5 gigabits of capacity committed under contract, which we believe makes us the market leader for IP, international IP transit in the region, which we think is testament to how important it is to close the gap, given the fact that we're only about to go into operation. We have every terminal type deployed through the region in 13 separate locations. We're continuing to add more customers all the time with this product. We just signed a customer here in the Pacifics last week. But from our point of view, in the same way as you think of a fiber cable, it's just transport, right? It's a beautifully designed system. It's extremely elegant. But once it's done, the really interesting part is what people do with it, which goes back to the original question. And Jules, what happens in your network? What will this enable?
Well, can I just take you back just 5 years ago? When I arrived, I think we had something like 18 or 20 megabits of geo capacity into the whole country. And we signed up with O3b in mid-2010, I think it was now. And we had a little while to wait. We knew things were being built. So we added more geo capacity. In fact, we've added in that time, and we've increased our bandwidth in geo, I think, 6-fold. But, and I thought, well, we've brought our prices down. We've given a lot more data to customers. We've given them the sort of speeds we can do with geo. But still they say to me, well, that's great for the applications on the left of that screen. But actually, we want to be in the 21st century. I mentioned before, my customers are saying we want to be as good as New Zealand or Australia. We want to be as good as anywhere else in the Pacific and better. And you can't do that unless you've got low latency. You can see the sorts of applications that we're talking about there. Video is is pretty popular where we are. But you heard the man from Ewan Smith, who's the chief executive or the chair of the tourism board in the Cook Islands, saying that he wants server-to-server transactions for his business, the cloud computing, the kind of things that our customers are saying, hey, we want to get into this. The kids and some of the grown-ups too with gaming. That's only possible when we get down to the sorts of low latency that's available on O3B. So, John, I think you're going to show us a few
just to forward, I am completely obsessed with satellite at this point, but most of my career has been in terrestrial. So it occurs to me that if you're from the fibre world, for example, in this room, what we're about to show you looks quite normal. And actually, that is a massive shift forward. That's a sea change for the satellite industry. If anybody here from the fibre world considers the speeds and the interactivity of the web performance we're going to show over our links as normal, because it means we've bridged the gap. And if you're from the satellite industry, you know that this is a complete sea change. That the way that you experienced the web before over satellite has changed radically from this day going forward. First thing I'm going to show you is probably the most visible example of latency on probably the most popular thing that we do every day, which is to search. And search has changed dramatically. We no longer wait till we get to the end of a search term until we get the results. We have instant search. And we only need 30 milliseconds to be able to scan an instant search result presented to us and decide whether or not to take that option. And the average person's typing speed is such that the time between each keystroke is 300 milliseconds. So therefore, on geosynchronous satellites, you're typing faster than the results can be sent back to you. So here on our system, the first thing you'll notice on instant search is how quickly the results are coming back to you, but most importantly as well is how quickly those images are being sent back to you over our link. And you can see it's an extremely smooth, sublime experience as the web pages load. You're not waiting for frames to build up. Even when you're backspacing at a very fast speed, you're seeing reordered results being replayed back to you. This is how the system works. It's that fast. Moving to another example now, which is e-commerce. We're going to go to an Amazon site. And you'll see here, if 4 out of 10 users, if they wait more than 3 seconds, they will abandon an e-commerce site. And to the left here, we obviously have the geosynchronous example, which is a 10 meg link using Riverbed. To the right, we have the O3B link, same size link, 10 megabits, but no acceleration. And you can simply navigate around the web and do exactly what you want to do with the speed and responsiveness that you would expect. It's a landslide in terms of the change in speed. You can see Geo here is still struggling and will take a decent amount of time to come along, so I'll skip ahead. Maps, the first thing that we do, Maps is highly interactive. We'll search for a location, we'll receive that location, maybe we'll go to satellite view, we'll go to street view, we'll zoom around, we'll pan left, we'll pan right. But every time we do that, we're requesting something from the server. And 700 milliseconds of delay to get each piece of information is intolerable. And that makes the service extremely hard to use. You can see here how quickly our system loads up maps. Another example is online social gaming. So in the case of Geo on the left, it simply doesn't work. In the case of O3B, the animation hasn't played. You'll see that we quickly go into the server room and we're able to play real-time games and and gameplay commences. Facebook's users, they recently reported that 250 million of their users play online social games every single day. Multiplayer console gaming has been completely impossible over geosynchronous satellites. The reality is, in this example, Call of Duty, you're into a server room and you're able to play first-person shooter games against other players that are probably using terrestrial systems. Google Docs, which is now integrated with Google Mail, which is now integrated with Google Drive. This is how many of us are viewing our documentation, how we're downloading documents, we're editing documents, we're collaborating with others, we're sharing at the same time. One of the features that Google has introduced is save as you type. So every time you you type a letter, it's going back to the server and it's being saved. That allows other users to see the same document. That creates a real challenge for geosynchronous satellites because of the latency. And many of the client-server features that we're talking about rely on low latency. You can see here we've already created a document, wrote into the document, saved the document, and of course you can imagine if you were doing this on Geo, you probably wouldn't use this as your document management, and then you'd go local. At enterprise level, we use BoxNet as an example. Here we're going into our directory, which is dynamically presented information. There's a lot of negotiation between multiple users as to reconciling with the fact that there's multiple users using multiple documents at the same time. We can visualize rich media content. You can see how quickly this loads. Just getting to that point on Geo is extremely cumbersome. And I'll show you very briefly the time that it takes to load such an image. It's extremely slow. And compared to ours, it's exactly as though you were checked into a hotel in New York. It's as fast as terrestrial infrastructure. I'm going to let the first piece come in and then I'm going to move on because it takes such a long time. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, but the fact is that now over satellite, you can expect to have and enjoy exactly the same experience as if you were here in Hawaii, in Australia, in New Zealand. There is simply no difference. There are no applications that do not run over our system. And from that, given that it's been this way for the last 10 years...
Frustrating. I mean, when I first came here, it was still dial-up. That was like 8 years ago. Yeah. So we kind of have, I call it broadish band. It's kind of not quite dial-up, but it's not really usable, which is more and more frustrating because everything's moving on. Like, everything assumes you can see video. Everything assumes, so there's so much more data-rich websites these days, and you can't avoid them. So, you know, it's just frustrating that you can't fully join in.
We're getting about 110 millisecond ping time to Hawaii, and then not much more further on to San Diego. So that was about 3 times as good. Really, really awesome. Really happy with it. Much improved.
Yeah, well, this is the normal standard we'll get. As you can see, it's just stopping and starting, and this is quite normal in the cooks on YouTube, and it's quite normal especially in the afternoons. When we tried this yesterday and the new O3B was up, didn't stop at all, it ran straight through, so I can see it's going to be a really great improvement for us.
Before, if I went onto YouTube or anything like that, it would stop, start all the while. Whereas now I'm straight onto it and there's no issues at all, so it's fantastic.
Yeah, way better. So I'm happier. My life is easier, everything goes faster, and then you can achieve more in less time, and that's the best, I think.
This is just amazing. It will just bring us to the forefront of the rest of the world. I'll just, it's amazing.
I noticed the other day, I think the kids were using it for YouTube or something, and it actually, the whole thing ran without just being any stoppage. So it was good to see.
I reckon the new service will be probably 3 times faster, 3 or 4 times faster. Okay. They used to compare the old service we had to dial up in New Zealand.
So playing a game on the internet, last time I tried, it took about an hour and a half or something. Now it only takes about 40 to 30 minutes.
As a teenager myself, I heavily rely on the internet, and having this new high-speed service would be amazing for me because here in the Cook Islands, our internet speed isn't that great. So every day you're just waiting for the page to load and load and load. But with this new high-speed internet, we'd be able to, boom, streaming everything, uploading everything, downloading everything. It'd make it a whole lot easier for everyone here. To stay here and study with the new internet service because I'd be able to stream videos that educate me from the university's website rather than moving away from my home. I'd still be able to gain the same amount of education that others receive overseas by using the online service and internet here.
Yeah, well, if the internet was, fast enough and I could study online here, I would definitely stay here.
We just come in from Australia and it was about the same sort of speed as an Australian internet, so great for the Cook Islands. Probably going to take ages.
Usually does.
Oh, that was really fast.
Usually it takes long.
I know.
But that doesn't mean she's not in on this. We're dropping the charges
against you. You're free to go.
Oh my gosh, you can just like watch this inside the alley. Wait, try to fast forward a little bit and see if it'll load.
Oh my gosh, it's just like being in New Zealand.
It's just a week.
Far out.
So you see, yeah, it's like that tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're hearing from our customers just what more is becoming available beneath the surface. We are absolutely blown away. We've had the service up and being trialled for some time, and the sort of things we've been able to run consecutively, everything like from Netflix through from video calls going in the background. We've had our Minister of Telecommunications watching the Australians beat the English at cricket. But that was all live on YouTube. He couldn't believe it, as well as other people in the room doing other things at the same time. So, it's actually exceeded our expectation. Even when the rain's coming down, it's performing brilliantly. So, from 5 years ago, that gap has just come right down. We've closed that gap. We're just blown away.
Are you taking any questions?
We are.
Okay. Can you say something, the gentleman from the Cooks Telecom, about the pricing of these services compared to what you were prices you were using before and affordability in the outer islands?
We're paying a fraction of what we pay on Geo.
No, but what are the customers paying, the end users?
Oh, at the moment, we've actually reached the most affordable for our broadband pricing even now, compared to 11 other Pacific countries. With O3B, we're going to go just that much further ahead. So yes, we're passing those cost reductions on to our customers. We need to do that. We want them to use the service. This is as mentioned about nation building. We want to give them extra data, extra speeds at a lower price, and that's what we can do now. I came to the Cook Islands 5 years ago with that challenge. It was in my ear the whole time. It was on the front page of the paper about how rubbish our service was. I can go away and say I've delivered. About the actual dollars per meg or something? No, I can't, because I have a confidentiality arrangements, and you've got to be able to. But it's an absolute fraction of what we were paying for Geo. You certainly can. They'll tell you the changes they've made already and leading up to this as well. But yes, they will see some better pricing very soon.
But I think if you ask our customers that we've signed in the region, I don't think you'll find a customer that's saying they're paying. I think they'll say that it's between 50% and a third of what they were previously paying.
Jules, going into this with O3B, this is something brand new that nobody's ever done before. What was it that gave you the confidence to actually do this? I mean, I'd be frightened to death to get into something like this, but you've been Mr. Cheerful and happy the whole time. What is it that gave you that confidence?
Well, I don't know whether I'm not overly religious or anything, but I thought it seemed to be like the answer to our prayers. And to be honest with you, there was not a huge amount of risk. From my point of view, if this works well, we've done well, and we haven't had to sink tens of millions of dollars into something. And I can tell you, it works brilliantly. It seemed to me, without being a technical person, that the technologies they were talking about made sense. You lower it to Earth, you're going to get the return path for your signals is that much shorter, you're going to get better latency, better throughput. It just seemed like it was a no-brainer.
Okay.
I've been given a message here.
Great, thank you.
Visit the PTC Pavilion and meet with the PTC'14 exhibitors to learn about the latest in systems, products, and services. The exhibits are located in the PTC Pavilion in Coral Ballrooms 4 and 5 of the Mid-Pacific Conference Center. In addition to the exhibits, the PTC Pavilion also features meeting cubicles, meeting tables, conference luncheons, and more.
I'm Julie Ford with PTC TV. Thanks for joining us. Today I'm here with Mike McCartney. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Hawaii's Tourism Authority. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Aloha. Thanks for having me, and want to thank everybody for coming to Hawaii. Mahalo.
Well, we're so glad you're here, and we've got, as you know, over 1,600 people from 70 different countries. What would you like to tell them from Hawaii's tourism industry?
Well, first of all, mahalo for coming to visit Hawaii. And when you come here, please experience our people, our place, and our culture. And when you get to see Hawaii and feel Hawaii and experience it, you'll see something very special. It's the Aloha Spirit. And the Aloha Spirit is really the coordination of your mind and heart. And it brings each person to the self, and it's for the collective existence. So we say, live aloha is to share aloha. And Auntie Pilahi Paki said that as the world searches for peace, the world will turn to Hawaii, because Hawaii has a key, and that key is aloha. So we hope you experience that aloha here, and then share it with the rest of the world, and come back and visit us. And thank you so much for having this conference here and spending your time and energy to be here. Mahalo.
Thank you so much. On behalf of PTC, thanks for joining us. Aloha.
Join us for the Tuesday evening reception sponsored by PTC'14 Diamond sponsor Tata Communications. All full conference delegates and delegates holding a one-day registration pass for Tuesday are invited to attend the Tuesday evening reception. The reception starts at 6:30 p.m. and will take place at the Super Pool at the Hilton Hawaiian Village Waikiki Beach Resort. A valid badge is required to attend the Tuesday evening reception, so please remember to bring your badge with you. If you would like to bring a guest, please make sure your guest has a guest ticket. Guest tickets will be available for purchase at the door for $85. Are you plugged into social media? Then join the conversation online. Follow PT Council on Twitter and use the PTC'14 hashtag, which is #PTC'14. You can also like Pacific Telecommunications Council on Facebook.
Infinera's approach to the subsea space is to bring you the industry's best and most powerful innovations, help drive your ability to generate revenue and lower costs to create a competitive advantage, and to deliver to you a subsea network that's designed for optimum performance for your customers. Don't just take it from us, take it from our customers, from around the world that have trusted in us and continue to grow their network with the best subsea network upgrade in the business.
Next, let's join a keynote panel on policy challenges in the Asia-Pacific region.
We have Soichiro Seki, Director General for International Affairs, ICT Strategy Bureau, Ministry of International Affairs and Communications, Japan. We have Shivnas Prasad, the Director of Communications Policy, Director of Communications, Ministry of Communications and Justice, and Acting Chairman of the Telecommunications Authority, Fiji, and Ron Box, the Regulator, Telecommunications and Radio Communications Regulator of Vanuatu. Now, this is really interesting for a variety of reasons. Three of them are island archipelagos. Japan is the largest, 6,852 islands, 4 main islands, 90% of the population. Population of Japan is 126 million. Tokyo alone is 30 million. Fiji is 332 islands, of which 110 are inhabited. The land area is 18,300 square kilometers, and the population is near 900,000. Vanuatu is an island archipelago of 83 smaller islands which run 1,300 kilometers north to south. 7% of the land mass is available for agriculture, and the population is 220,000. And we have, and Japan is a very developed economy in terms of telecoms and ICT, and is one of the world leaders in adoption of mobile, iMode. We all know how Japan has been a leader in many of the developments that we've been hearing about. One of the big issues for policymakers, and the first question I've asked them to talk about, is every year when we come to conferences like this, we listen to all the developments in technology and all the future forecasts. Policymakers and regulators, of course, have to deliver services. They have to deliver low prices. They have to deliver access. And so the first question I've asked them, and we'll go from the three from Soichiro to Shivnesh to Ron. The first question is, as you sit here and listen to all these technology forecasts, what runs through your head as a regulator or as a policymaker? Is it panic? Like, what do I do? Or is it relief? Does it make things easier, or does it make things worse? I think so.
Yes. As you said, the speed of technological development is very fast. And personally, I was involved in other policy areas, such as the climate change. In that area, technological development was made in the time span of the 10 years and so forth. So it was more predictable what will happen in the near future. However, in this telecommunication and communication field, technological development is very fast, and the new technologies penetration to the market is very fast. So it is challenging indeed. And if we think about the situation in Japan, in 2006, fiber to the home subscribers was overtook. Fiber to the home subscribers overtook the subscribers of the DSL. The number of the subscribers was in Japan of fiber to the home was about 13 million. And in 2013, then the LTE subscribers overtook the fiber to the home subscribers at the level of the 30 million. So the main player in the market was shifting very dramatically in a very short period of time. And data traffic, mobile wireless data traffic in Japan is increasing by 2-fold in every year. If we recall the Moore's law, which said in the semiconductor chip industry, the level of integration is doubled in 18 months, 18 months. So the data traffic is expanding faster, much faster. And if it continues for 10 years, the data traffic will become 1,000 times more than now in 10 years. It's a math, easy math. I calculated myself. So that's the situation we face. And how I feel is that we need to collaborate with the industries, because we cannot predict by ourselves alone. And we need to have a wide scope for new technologies. And we need to be very careful what's happening in the daily life. And we cannot know by ourselves all. So we need to collaborate with the industry more closely in designing the policies. That's how I feel.
Well, Shivnesh, you've 30 million households fiber to the home. population of 900,000 across all the Fijian islands. So how do you look at this technology explosion? Is it helpful or harmful to you doing your job?
Well, from the point of view of a policymaker in a small developing state as Fiji, the explosion in technology development really presents to you opportunities as well as challenges. So you're sort of scared by it a bit, but you're also excited at the prospect of the opportunities it brings you along, right? Opportunities in terms of like the geography of Fiji is such, accessibility had been an issue previously. Through changes in technology and adapting new changes such as 4G, LTE, etc., we are now in a position to put accessibility back on our agenda, increase accessibility to the people through adopting these latest technologies, implementing networks, 4G networks. On the flip side is you need to also be aware of other things that are associated with the expansion of services, like for example, cybercrimes. Small island states particularly are vulnerable to these things. So we need to, as the policymakers, we need to be aware of the challenges as well. We need to react to this. We need to make appropriate policy guidelines and legislations to safeguard the people, and especially the teenage users, the students, with respect to social media as well. So yeah, going back to what we were talking about, in terms of the technology expansion, opportunities, yet challenges, it's just a matter of how you manage them to ensure that you strike a balance.
And Ron, you're new. How long have you been in your job, Vanuatu?
About 15 months or so.
15 months. So 220,000 population spread over a large number of islands. So how do you see the technology explosion?
I will answer your first question first and then come back to that. You said, how do we see all these developments? You've got to look at it as to whether it's fact or fiction. Will it come about or not? Experience actually tends to say it will, at least 90% of it. So you have to be aware. You also asked, what does it make me feel? You can't fear it, Len. You just have to embrace it, okay? Now, from a Vanuatu perspective, fibre to the home, a myth. It won't exist. There is fibre in the ground, but that'll be basically off the government network and off perhaps for business. We're talking about 83 islands, 63 inhabited, the world, very high illiteracy rate, rated by the UN as the world's most at risk from natural disaster country. So what do we do? What have we got? Probably 10% penetration rate now at the best on internet. 80-odd% have never heard of it. So where do we start? Well, the government set in place 3 excellent policies: a high-arching ICT policy, a universal access policy, and a cyber security policy. So we have an ambitious plan, and we are the implementer. In 4 years, 98% of the population of about, I think it's actually now about 264,000, because the last census was 2009. 98% of the population will have, I guess, Facebook speeds. That's a huge challenge, but we're looking forward to that.
So and let's talk a little more about access. In Japan, access, is there any percentage of the population that don't have access to, let's say, 3G or LTE?
Well, the coverage rate of 3G for the populated area is 100%. And for the LTE, it depends on the companies, but from 90 to 95% or something like that.
And Fiji, what's your major access issue?
Our major constraint or challenge in terms of ensuring accessibility is the terrain. And Fiji is over 333 islands, and about 111 of them have people living on it. So the geography is such that you need to invest heavily in infrastructure, towers, cables, etc., to ensure that the population is serviced. The problem lies is some of these villages or settlements may have populations as less than 30, 40 people, or only 4 or 5 households. So how much do you rely on your service providers to invest in these particular areas? This is where government's Universal Service Access Scheme comes in very handy. In terms of accessibility, the numbers at the moment state that 95% of the Fiji population have access to 3G networks. Right? The remaining 5% are the ones that are either in the outer island areas or in the interior of the main islands or small pockets of population around the country. So the challenge really is to ensure accessibility to these areas, and that's the numbers we're looking at is close to about 30 to 40,000 people. And through our Universal Service Access program that we're launching, we actually launched late last year, we aim to be targeting at least 75% of these numbers to be on the grid, so to speak, before the end of this year.
And Ron?
I think there's a digital divide anyway, as we know. And the digital divide becomes greater with the iPhone versus the 2G, 2.5G phone. What we have is a huge digital divide, and the government's policies is intended to overcome that. We have effectively 20% of the population really they're the haves. 2 cities, the other 80% don't. So as the 20% get the iPhone, it makes that gap greater. It has to be bridged, otherwise it will become impossible. So that 4-year ambitious rollout is to say the haves in the 2 cities will equal what those that don't have at the moment, the unserved and underserved, will have what the haves in the cities already have. Now that I think is fantastic, because if we don't head in that direction, the gap won't ever be achievable. So it's a hard ask. It's mobile, effectively. It's mobile, satellite backhaul, etc., even though we now have submarine cable arrival last week. Submarine cable backhaul will be vital to that, to achievement.
So let me just keep going. So with you, then come back to the others. So in terms of, we've heard a lot at the conference of OTT services. So as your 20% have started using OTT services, what happens to your the abilities to have universal service funds? How are you going to treat in that kind of environment OTT? Is that a special problem for you that you see?
I'm lucky enough to be administering what I think is the most exciting universal access policy in the world. And I can say it pretty sincerely. We met with industry last week. They have to deliver. I have to report to the government in 6 weeks' time on how industry will achieve that ambitious plan. And it's every licensee, not those that you would automatically think that would be involved in universal access. And if they don't achieve it, I am forced, with delight, to put a levy up to 4% of net revenue. So the regulator has one enormous stick to achieve it. We are working on collaboration, because I think the stick approach is not what I want to use. Everyone will put in their share to achieve the government's objectives. And I think it's a very interesting policy. It also is not just access as we would think it of access. It's tablets, anything, effectively. So it's more than just service delivery. It's actually end-user service provision, which will include tablets. It can include iPhones, and that's how you bridge the gap. That's how they get access.
Shivnesh, how about you? Universal service funds, how will OTT affect Fiji's ability to maintain access and roll out more access?
Okay. When we advertised for our universal service access, it was we did not define what particular technology the operators need to use in order to ensure these populations. However, we were lucky that what happened middle of last year was that we had our 4G LTE auction. So the 3 operators that are currently in Fiji, all of them secured 4G LTE spectrum. And they fulfilled their quotas at the auction. And the licenses that were issued, the management rights that were issued in September last year stated that they need to have 4G network really in place within the first 12 months. And then there's some safeguards built into the license itself, which ensures, you've got targets, population targets, coverage obligations that will be tested over a period of time. And there are also some, not just having obligations, but also incentives. If you exceed this by certain percentages, then there are rewards that are built into the framework, through which a licensee can claim up to 40% of the original amount of money they paid at the auction for that particular spectrum, if they're able to achieve or overachieve the targets. Now, coming back to the universal service access areas, this has huge potential as far as the 700 megahertz networks are concerned. The proposal that we've received from the vendors for contracts on the universal service access scheme is we see that they're proposing a combination of 3G and 4G networks. 4G obviously is cheaper to sort of roll out in the less populated areas, the rural areas. They don't need to invest in infrastructure as much, especially over 700 megahertz networks. So that's a possibility. We are still at the moment on the point of awarding this contract, so analysis on this is still going ahead. We should be doing that in the next couple of weeks. So we are excited by this prospect because by government really offering this spectrum, the LTE spectrum, to these operators just before the universal service access scheme actually came on board, it was actually a plus point because the operators can invest fairly less amount of money as opposed to previous times, and they're able to cover a significant amount of population. That said, there's also an issue in terms of accessibility, as Ron had said. It's not just about getting services into these areas, but the devices as well. Now, government also has a supplementary project, which is the Government Community Telecenter project, through which we are opening centers that operate as telecenters for the use of the general population in certain vicinities. At the moment, we have about 20 of these sites across the 2 main islands, as well as in the islands, 2 smaller islands of the main islands. So at the moment, the number of people that are already using the services has gone over 47,000 in the last 18 months. So we're sort of addressing the issue of accessibility both on the fronts of service accessibility as well as access to devices.
And Soichiro, what are Japan's policies on OTT?
Well, OTT is becoming a kind of commodity, and so the competition in the market will enhance the quality and the quantity of OTT, we hope. And we have friends from Pacific, so could I touch upon the situation in the
Sure.
Southeast Asian countries? Yes, and in Japan, we have already the universal access service on the fixed line telephone, and then mobile phone came in. But of course, in other Southeast Asian countries and South Asian countries, that is not the case. So they face a very difficult challenge, and they have densely populated cities. At the same time, they have a remote area, they have remote islands, and they have areas which does not have electricity service. So many countries have the broadband service target, and they have a universal service fund, which is going to be allocated to help the broadband penetration in the country. The point is, the technological solution or technological option is not simple. The technology which is going to be deployed in the densely populated city cannot be applied to an area which does not have electricity supply. So they have to pursue their very different paths in parallel at the same time. That is their challenge. So maybe OTT will become a commodity for the big cities, but for the remote area or island people, maybe telecenters will be a first entrance for them to get acquainted with the internet service.
Let me turn to the audience. Are there questions you have for this panel? Heather, yeah, Heather Hudson. There are many mics in the room. Would you like a microphone? Thank you.
Thank you. This question is for the representatives from Vanuatu and Fiji. I heard Fiji, you just mentioned telecenters. I wondered if, two parts of the question. One, whether Vanuatu has taken that approach to community access, but also in both countries, whether you have any policy of providing high-speed internet to all of your schools, and if so, what that policy is, and whether you see schools or any other institutions as anchor tenants, because as you both pointed out, in some of the small communities or even larger ones in Vanuatu that have no service, community access may be, as well as educational access, may be an important transitional step. We also know, I've worked in Alaska getting broadband into villages, and you were mentioning smartphones, and we wondered how did people do some of the things they said they were doing with their smartphones. And they said, well, we come to the schools have Wi-Fi, and we can use our phones in Wi-Fi mode. So in a sense, a school with Wi-Fi can serve multiple functions. Anyway, the question is both telecenters or community access generally and schools in particular as anchor tenants as well as an educational service. Thank you.
I'll let Shiv go first on telecenters because I'm actually not a telecenter fan, but I'll define that in a moment. But that's Fiji's focus.
With respect to our policies, coming back to what you said about is there any specific targets for schools, number of schools to be on the broadband grid by a particular time? The government's policy on broadband actually states that all secondary schools and at least 85% of the primary schools to have broadband services by 2016, 85% of them to be on the grid. So we're working on that. Now, this is something that it's not just the government is pushing forward, but also we've got good support from the operators in the sector as well. And there are numerous programs where a certain operator is sponsoring a number of schools to come into, and they provide free access to ISP services for these schools. And where the operators are not moving, the government is actually moving into these areas as well, and we are doing the same. With respect to the use of schools as the community sort of hub for the provision of these services. There are some schools where we have provided Wi-Fi services, but the issue is where we have telecenters, the issue is not with service itself, but with access to tablets or access to PCs. So the population still prefers to come in and use this, the lab that we've set up, because they don't have their own devices to access the services with. So at the moment, how we're probably addressing that is the government has reduced the duty, zero-rated duty on devices like smartphones, etc., to allow people to access these things at a cheaper price. So we're hoping that that also creates or improves the uptake of devices at community level.
Yeah, I think you hit the answer in many ways. What I'm against with telecenters is the sustainability of them. There's no point in having them, establishing and then walking away. So we did a pilot trial. It took 2 years to get one telecentre sustainable in Vanuatu. 1 year of Universal Access Fund money, a lot of my time, my staff time in the final year with a smaller amount of funding. Once the telecentre is sustainable, there's a chance of achievement, and I agree with you about Wi-Fi. That's one of the big tricks for sure. The reason I think the policy is so exciting in Vanuatu is that there's a commitment from all sides. So that the government has set it in train, the government has a an office of the Chief Information Officer that I normally work with in direct reporting to the Prime Minister. They have formed a memorandum of understanding with education, and the driver of that was the pilot trial in Rensari, as we call it, the Tele Centre, so that the weaknesses were you don't build it and take it there and hope it works. The positive out of it was that when you get it sustainable, that's good. How do you do that? Well, the lesson was if you reach the community through education, it'll work. So this was an all-level school and a live-in school as well. So I completely agree with you. The only way is to use the education resources to get there. The trial or the modus operandi that I was mentioning before about the operators having to deliver to 98% is part of a whole range of things. We have another telecentre trial. We have access to fund money, which I administer. That will be this exciting 15 schools fully fitted out. We'll see how that goes, etc. Provision of tablets in other areas, establishment of internet cafes, etc. And we expect some to fail. So we hold in reserve from our fund about 60%. We trial, we see what works, we evaluate, we move on. I think universal access in itself is such a challenge that you've got to expect failure. You learn from it, you limit your failure in terms of cost, but you gain from the growth to then apply it further.
So Shivnesh and Ron, Chiro started off by talking about working with industry. So how do you work with industry? Do you, for example, with multiple operators, do you allow sharing of infrastructure? What are kind of the innovative policies that you could use in small population and these multiple island regimes?
The universal access policy will force it. They say now that they're interested in co-sharing, co-location. They haven't been. Before I arrived, they all built their own towers.
So how many operators are there?
Well,
in mobile, for example?
There are two mobile operators and four key internet service providers, two of which are the mobile operators. But there's another one that's providing service out to the rural. So three. So what I think you find is that how do you get them? A regulator has many tricks, but if they don't negotiate, and they have to come up with a collective answer. So we're forcing industry to work from that point of view. The government's put its policy in place. We had the fight last week. The answer is go away and think about it. You come back to me with a collective. Not easy? Nothing's easy in life. But this way is for the achievement of the population of Vanuatu, and they have a chance to grow in that, grow their business. It could be a win-win. It'll be difficult, of course it is, and it's ambitious, but if you don't set ambitious sights, you don't get there.
And Shivnesh, how many mobile operators are there in Fiji?
We have basically three. In fact, two. One of them is an MVNO that rides along with the other, so yeah, two.
And in terms of infrastructure sharing, do you enforce it or do you allow it? Or?
At the moment, government has drafted an infrastructure sharing co-location regulations. That is, how can I say, it's in a draft stage, and we are we're discussing this further with the industry to ensure that this is a solution that's workable for everyone. That said, I think government's intention is that we will put this basically on the floor before the end of this quarter. But this has been in development for a fair bit of time, I think over the last year at least. With respect to sharing of infrastructure, government has always been encouraging it where possible, but the issue is that normally with rival operators, they don't like to share each other's infrastructure. But then you've got sharing of infrastructure in a way between, let's say, broadcasters or smaller players in the telco market that are sharing this infrastructure with one of the providers in the area. What we are working on are the type of infrastructure sharing regulations we're working on. Obviously, we want to minimize the duplication of resources, and eventually, we want to come to a point where there's a single set of infrastructure along the country, and that just is not related just only to telcos, but also to the broadcasting sector. And that makes things easier because there are a lot of sites are in areas where things like road access is an issue. Electricity is an issue. Some of these sites may be powered by solar mechanisms. So if you have a disaster, some of these areas have generators, diesel generators. So if you have any disasters like hurricanes or road access gets blocked, then and the refueling is not done on time, then there's always an issue with this. So by having really a single set of infrastructure on which all of these operators are riding on, government is then able to provide basic access of roads and electricity to these areas. So we're hoping that that eventuates once we put out the legislation this year.
Any other questions from the audience for the panel?
May I touch upon the facility collocation? Yes, in Japan there are big 3 mobile operators, and on the other hand, we have many virtual network operators, and virtual network operators are having now about 10 million subscribers in Japan, and they are now having a very big impact to the market through offering new kind of services to the consumers. And we keep our eyes on the against market power abuse on those cases. But if we, collocation and infrastructure sharing in general will help to lower the threshold to the market entrance. So in that sense, that could be helpful. But if we are to ensure the competition in the market, I would like to draw your attention to the importance of the information dissemination, because consumers and the government needs to know the correct up-to-date situation of the competition in the market. So we have a mandatory reporting system on the subscriptions numbers, and also we have a mandatory public announcement on the terms and conditions and the prices. So that will help us and the consumers to have a better understanding on the quality and the prices of the services and the actual situation of the competition. So that kind of mixture of policies will help the competitive market.
Well, thank you all. I would want to thank this panel on behalf of the audience. I think you'll agree that even with the sweeping technology changes, when you hear these 3 individuals, you realize that regulation and policy making are in good hands. So thank you all. Thank you.
Looking to pick up your registration badge and materials or register for PTC'14? Visit the PTC'14 registration booth. The registration booth is located in the Coral Lounge on the 6th floor of the Mid-Pacific Conference Center at the Hilton Hawaiian Village Waikiki Beach Resort. The registration booth is open every day starting at 8 a.m. Please remember to bring a valid form of photo identification with you to claim your registration badge and materials. PTC'14 is made possible in part by the generosity of the PTC'14 sponsors. Mahalo to each of the PTC'14 Gold sponsors. Thank you for all of your support. During PTC'14, the PTC Secretariat will be located in C Pearl 3 on the 6th floor of the Mid-Pacific Conference Center at the Hilton Hawaiian Village Waikiki Beach Resort. If you need assistance from a member of the Secretariat, please visit C Pearl 3. Your PTC'14 registration includes wireless internet access at the following locations throughout the Hilton Hawaiian Village Waikiki Beach Resort: Mid-Pacific Conference Center, Kalia Conference Center, Tapa Conference Center, Super Pool, Tapa Pool and Bar, and Starbucks. Wired and wireless internet access is available in all sleeping rooms, up to 4 devices per promotion code. Please note your promotion code will be active for 7 days after login.
Hello, my name is Maribel Lopez, and I'm the founder of Lopez Research, a market research firm in San Francisco, and I'm happy to be here today on PTC TV. We're here today with Stephen Ho. He's now the new president of the PTC organization and also the CEO of City Telecom CPC. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Maribel.
So, obviously, there's a lot of interest going on with changes in PTC, and you're now the new president, and PTC has had an interesting and evolving mission over the past 5 years. Can you talk a little bit about how PTC's mission is different now than it was, say, 2 or 3 years ago, and what's changed in the industry?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. In fact, I have been with PTC for a number of years, and I sit on the Board of Governors for the last 4 years. I'm very happy and very honored to be elected as president this year. To go back to your questions, I think the mission and vision of PTC has not been changed per se, but the industry itself evolved, right?
Yes,
PTC
definitely.
itself really facilitates the ICT industry, but the ICT industry in the last 10 years has changed a lot. We're seeing a lot of trends, new trends coming in, not only in telecommunications where PTC really started. We have satellites, we have undersea cables, we have lots of folks doing the telecoms in the area. Nowadays, we've got a lot of new challenges and a lot of new exciting things happening around the regions, such as cloud computing. We have mobilities, and mobile is a big thing now. We have information security. I mean, in the last 2 years, nobody talks about information security, for example. But these years, you know, the trend is coming, and we know that it is very important that we have our focus and attention to new areas.
Yeah, I think there's been a tremendous change with the evolution of it, not just being about connectivity, but value-added computing services on it. So you mentioned cloud computing, you mentioned security. I think a lot of the organizations we're looking at are looking at those two combined going forward. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in the Asia-Pac market. You know, there's the developing regions and the emerging markets, and how do you see those evolving?
Okay, well, we can talk about, in terms of the market, we can talk in terms of two things. One is the developing country, or the other one is the developed economy, right? In the developing country, I think they are blessed, really blessed, and the reason is because of all these new technologies coming on board, where if they were to lay new fiber optic cables, is a lot more cheaper than previously. So in terms of pricing, they can offer pricing in telecommunications of services through their populations at a much cheaper and more affordable price, like compared to the days 20 years ago, right? So mobile phones, telephones, IP or internet connectivity can be a lot cheaper and a lot more affordable. In the more developed world, is a slightly different challenge. I think one of which is because I've talked about the new trends in terms of cloud computing, right? How do you engage in that market? How would cloud computing work with the connectivity? How would connectivity work with the information security? And those are some of the new challenges that the developed
world here in the Asia Pacific is facing. And I think one good thing about PTC here is it's a big melting pot for intellectual thought leaderships and vendors and everybody together in the conference and share what new trends we're facing and what challenges that we're facing and how can we make the world a better world in the ICT world.
One last final wrap-up question. Mobile is obviously very important in the marketplace right now. How is it changing your business?
Oh, a lot. In the old days, I have to do a lot of work using wired connectivity. Now I can actually, in my office, or if I'm outside my office, I can read and approve things wirelessly. I can use either a smartphone or using Wi-Fi in the hotel or anywhere outside, either with a tablet or things, and that completely changes this world in terms of productivity and things that we can interact with people.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time here today,
Thank you,
and I'm sure PTC is extraordinarily excited to have you as their new president.
Thank you very much.
PTC'14 is made possible in part by the generosity of the PTC'14 sponsors. Mahalo to each of the PTC'14 silver sponsors. Thank you for all of your support.
At Shaw Business, we listen to our wholesale partners. From investing in our technology to extending our network's reach, we're committed to providing everything you need to meet the demands of an increasingly connected world. With industry-leading transport speeds and a dedicated customer service team to support your business, we offer the services you need to be successful. Shaw Business, providing reliable network solutions so your customers won't miss a thing.
Today's last keynote panel will cover technology developments.
I wanted to let everyone know we're going to try something out for the Q&A part. We're using a web app called LiveSift for folks to send in questions. So if you do have questions as they come up, feel free to send them along. To participate, go to livesift.com. That's LIVESIFT.com. And just enter as the event PTC'14. So if folks think they want to do this, you might want to do that now while we're getting set up. And then once you have your question, it'll be real easy. You can type it in and I'll be able to see them as we go along. If that doesn't work, we have microphones and we'll do it the old-fashioned way, but we thought we'd give this a try. So this app. So anyway, with that aside for the moment, the topic, technology developments, is obviously pretty broad. And actually, we've already been talking at the conference so far about many of the most important changes that are really transforming the industry. The question that the next folks that I'm going to have on stage are going to help us address is, how do we actually deal with these things? We all know these devices are coming on at increasing numbers. They're using more data than ever before. And all the folks in this room are expected to magically make that work and do it with ever tighter budgets while still investing a ton in infrastructure. And then, so the question is, how do we make this make sense? How do we make this work for you guys as a business so that the end customers get what they want? I couldn't possibly answer that on my own. Luckily, I have a few smart folks that are going to join me and help answer that. So please help me welcome Margaret Dawson, who is the VP of Product Marketing and Cloud Evangelist for HP's Cloud Services, Carl Grivner, who's the CEO of PACnet, and Lou Tucker, who is the CTO for Cloud Computing at Cisco. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. So really briefly, just so that everyone knows kind of what experience you're bringing to this and what you do, talk a little bit about your background, not just what you're doing now, but kind of your experience in your careers, sort of in the sense of how does this position you to help these guys figure out how to run their businesses?
So for me, 25 years in high tech, before that automotive, the last 5 or 6 in cloud computing. Lived in Asia Pacific for 10 years, mostly in Taiwan and Hong Kong, working with high tech companies and the government there, helping them figure things out. So kind of broad experience. Yes.
Yeah, same here. I think we're all going to be of the same generation here, 25, 30 years in high tech. Yeah, we're all old. Right? Started originally in massively parallel supercomputing, building large distributed systems, which then became web systems. 2 tours of duty of Sun Microsystems, the last one building actually something called Sun Cloud, and most recently working a lot with the OpenStack community.
So I've been in Asia, Singapore for about 2 years. Prior to that, spent a lot of time in the U.S. Started my career with business career with IBM, and done a lot of different things over the years.
So, gang, I tend to write about the consumer end of this, all these devices, all these great applications, all the data they're consuming, and sort of the attitude is that all this stuff magically appears. And it doesn't magically appear. It's very expensive to produce, and one of the big questions is, how do we create a healthy enough ecosystem that everyone that is required to make it magically appear can afford to make it not so magically appear? What are some of the thoughts that each of you bring in terms of how we can create a healthier ecosystem for this explosion of devices and explosion of content on these devices to happen?
Yeah, well, one way actually, and I think that backstage we were talking a bit about how to get involved. And one of the things that we're talking a lot about, software-defined networking, we're talking about cloud computing platforms, is that I actually believe in the open source communities, it's an opportunity for a lot of the more non-traditional players to get involved in the software side of this. So we're seeing, like in OpenStack, for example, all the major tech companies are there. Also the carriers are there. Right. And that's very interesting. I haven't really seen that before. And so they bring the real world experience, and they also need to develop the services and everything else so that they can capture some of that value so they can actually make the investments that we need them to make in the infrastructure.
Why does open source matter in this? Is it just reducing costs? I covered the old Microsoft Linux, and it was about cost of ownership, and it lowers things by a little bit per person. That's not really what we're talking in telecom. Open source is to better define what it is you're doing, right?
Well, and it's also driving innovation faster. So the thing that people need to remember is that one of the things that's happening in OpenStack is that the pace of innovation is so much quicker than if you were trying to do this all yourself. And the way that community is created is it's actually modules. So, networking experts are working on the networking module, storage experts are working on the storage module, so to speak. So you're really taking best practices and core competency from these people that this is all they do, but it's benefiting the entire community. So that pace of innovation, time to market, is critical. But also, if we really want to achieve all the stuff we're talking about, which is federated clouds, and we're all able to move applications and the portability of that, the only way we're going to do that is with open APIs.
And I want to take a moment. We have kind of a stacked deck here. All three of you are involved in OpenStack.
We didn't know that, though, before, that we were all pro open source.
I want to know, it isn't like the whole industry has decided this is the way to go. I mean, the AT&Ts of the world have constantly...
They really have.
Smart ones.
Look at the number of companies that are involved. What it's indicative of, I think, is that the industry is recognizing that it requires cooperation. We're going to compete like hell in the marketplace for customers and everything else like that.
Right.
But when it comes to building basic software platforms, that's where we need to collaborate.
But you still have a ton of people building out proprietary APIs, proprietary clouds.
Sure. Build it into their hardware, exactly.
Yep.
Right,
exactly
right, making it very hard for interoperability or integration.
I mean, I go to these things. I was just at AT&T's developer forum at CES, and their big thing is, oh, we've got all these APIs to open our network, but their APIs aren't the same as Verizon's. No. And, these developers, these poor, small 2- and 3-person mobile things, they just came out with a cool game. Now, they've got to develop for iOS, they've got to develop for Android. AT&T saying, oh, you can develop, get 10% better battery life if you, write for our network API. Why is there still this debate over whether it's better to develop proprietary?
I think it's, everybody trying to be the smartest kid on the block more than anything else. We announced 3 months ago a network as a service, network in the cloud at the OpenStack conference. And for all the points that were mentioned is what's interesting about it, I compare it to when the iPad first came out, a lot of people used it for email and applications were developed. So we've announced the network in the cloud, which we've been told by many that's the first in the world to do something like that. And so people say, what are the applications for it? And that's part of the beauty of all this is the customers will develop the application. We talk to big banks, we talk to big software companies, and what they say is, give it to me, I'll figure it out, and then we'll become part of it. So I envision it. It's not just going to be a PACnet thing. What we want to do is we got to get other providers into it. And I use the analogy want to be Cisco certified in terms of network certified, that my network fits in that cloud and all of my customers can use it. They'll have to figure out the applications for it.
And you, obviously, you come to it from the perspective of the world's going to be a better place if I get people writing to something that works on my network versus spending their time writing something PACnet specific. You might get a couple local customers, but you're not going to get the biggest companies in the world to spend a lot of time doing something PACnet specific. One of the questions we talked about backstage is whether some sort of standardized API effort would work. And somebody's actually asked this question, so I'm going to test out the system and see if this question displays. But would a well-standardized API support innovation? I guess the broader question is, can we get to a well-standardized API?
For the last couple of years, I've been asked many, many times by all the different standards bodies, please participate and let's define the cloud API standard. And my response has always been, it's too early. And what we have today is actually Amazon, let's face it, is setting the standard for and they're capturing the largest developer base. Developers write to the largest platform. And so what we're seeing instead is something like OpenStack and other open source projects that are using the same APIs so that they can actually create a much larger platform for all the developers to go after.
I think there's some onus, though, even on the Amazons of the world, to also embrace a more, open standard. I mean, we look at in the old days, and even now, with many, carriers and telecoms, there's a feeling that if I keep my system proprietary, I have revenue protection.
Right.
And all you have to do is look at Microsoft and the operating system to know that actually is not true. That fighting the wave of open source or fighting the open community is not going to protect your revenue. It ends up being the opposite. And so what you've got to be thinking about is how do you embrace these open standards and then add value to that so that even your infrastructure is creating more value, like we talked about, right? There's still a lot that you can be doing to have value-added services, even if you are embracing the open standards.
And I think when we actually talked about the cloud platform at OpenStack, when we developed the network service, originally called Quantum, now called Neutron, we had that in mind, that we needed to be able to have a set of APIs that everybody would adhere to, but then there's plugins to the proprietary infrastructure underneath it,
or
so that you
above.
can have differentiation. And then there were extensions that you could put alongside. So you can have competition there, but you also can have the standardization at the same time.
Exactly.
As a service provider, we don't build the Cisco routers, we don't build the HP servers, we don't do any of that stuff. We integrate it all. So the most important person in a service provider company is the CIO that has to put all that stuff together. But we are dependent on the hardware people to develop the APIs. And a lot of them don't want to do that because they want to keep it close. Or somebody's going to come out with my own network as a service, but you have to use my infrastructure. That's not a good solution.
And to your point, and this is a number of the questions that I'm getting are saying the same thing. I think a lot of the folks are in your shoes saying, I don't create these things that you guys create. What role can you guys play, the big companies of the world, to help set these standards, to help define these APIs that do move beyond your own proprietary stuff? Because I think there's a lot of folks sitting in Carlsbad where it's like, what do I do? It's not clear to me how, I'm all for it.
I think we're already doing that. So if you look at, HP and Cisco compete heavily in many ways. But when it comes to OpenStack, we actually have people on the same development teams and areas projects that we are collaborating and contributing to these projects for their success. So, we've both committed, and you can look at, there's many other vendors, IBM and many others that have done the same thing. So what we see is, we're going to add value by being the company that provides hybrid cloud solutions in the enterprise. OpenStack is how we're going to do that. And obviously we're adding a whole lot of our own innovation and expertise. And that's what I would say the same to all of these companies is that, you work with many different vendors, you should be collaborating with each other, but finding what is your secret sauce? What is the thing that you're going to do to add value to gain that customer business and to gain that trust? And we're doing it in different ways.
I want to take a step back and look at the overall health of the industry, because I think if we don't have if each piece in the puzzle, in fact, if one big chunk of the pie isn't healthy, it really has a huge impact. And there's, one of the questions that folks said is, what are the actual network innovations that will help keep carriers relevant? And I think broadening out that question, if there's all these great services, but they're not benefiting the carriers, and the carriers are the ones that have to spend the money on all this great network infrastructure, how do we get to a place that's healthy enough to support the innovation that I think everyone in this room and even the end consumer really wants?
Yeah, I think that is a key question. And I think that what we're seeing, though, is that particularly I think in the last 18 months, I've seen a big shift. And that all the major carriers are recognizing, guess what, we've got data centers. So we actually can provide new services. We can provide services, and we can actually compete with a lot of the Googles and the Amazons and everybody else by offering services, and they're hiring now people out of former web companies so that they can actually start to offer these value-added services, because that's where we know that the money's going to be there. The dumb pipes and everything else like that, that is becoming commoditized.
Is there a reason you looked at me when you said dumb pipes?
No, you brought it up before. You brought it up
no, we talked about it before. I was told pipes should be dumb.
That we know it's a services market. And that particularly when you get into now the immense pressure that's going to be on these data centers and on the pipes in terms of bandwidth and the amount of data that's going through this, I think there's tremendous opportunities for new services around guaranteed delivery of that bandwidth, around being able to do reservations for that, and then providing services direct to consumers. A lot of the companies we're working with on OpenStack are it's public knowledge, we're working with Comcast. Well, they're delivering a video service.
Right.
So they have their data centers, but they're getting into consumer services, and that's what they're going to compete
well,
with.
And it's what we talked about this morning too, that it's not like you're going to rip and replace your infrastructure and immediately put in, SDN and all of these latest bells and whistles. So the first thing is that this is a journey both for you and for your customers. So think about how to phase in a lot of these new areas, and you talked about that. It's not like SDN is going to show up across your data center tomorrow. Yeah. So think about how to bring those in. And then I think the other thing is, what can you do today to monetize your infrastructure with new services, not only in what Lou was saying, but in that flexible capacity services. So monetizing things in a subscription base and delivering those, even if it's on-premise infrastructure, in a cloud-based economic model, so that you start to move yourself towards that area, and also becoming an expert in a solution area. So maybe disaster recovery is something you could do. So thinking even at the very top of the stack from a solution aspect, what can be your niche with your customers?
Well, but you're right, it's a journey, because you got so much infrastructure out there. Right. But you have to bring it up to a level that allows you to interface, use software as an interface, because a lot of the stuff is old, and you're starting to migrate through it. That takes years. You can't just do it overnight. So, it would be nice to say, bang, I got it all, but you got to put the new stuff in place in order to make it happen.
And monetize it along the way.
And monetize it along the way, and then also develop new ideas and new applications for it as you're doing. Otherwise, why continue the journey?
Jeffrey Moore has a number of talks he's giving now around talking about the difference between systems of record and systems of engagement. The system of record, which were traditional enterprise apps, finance and everything else like that, we solved that with the Y2K problem. We went through all of the systems, we fixed them all. They're probably not going to change a whole lot. They're done. Systems of engagement is how companies are going to engage with their customers, engage with their partners. And that requires a very different notion around what is networking. You want to create networks that can connect up to all of your electrical power grid meters. You want to create networks of all of your consumers on different devices.
So I think a lot of the folks, and I'm seeing this reflected in the questions they're sending, are like, that's great, we agree, we want to deliver those services. What do those look like? Is there anyone out there that's actually doing this? Is there a model of one of your guys' customers, or that you can point to and say, here's how they're becoming more than a dump pipe. Here's the service they're offering that they're getting paid for.
Sure. Use yourself.
We developed the network as a cloud. We've got a large, probably one of the world's largest banks in New York City that they send their interns, 500 interns, out to Asia every year. Sometimes they put them in Singapore, sometimes they'll put them in Beijing. They move them all around. So they want, as one of my large customers described it, they want liquid bandwidth. They want to be able to move it around. They want to be able to move their server applications around. They want to be able to back up data in different locations. So they're very excited about what we call the PACnet-enabled network, or network in the cloud, because it allows them that flexibility. They don't want to buy a line for 2 years or on a contract month to month. It takes forever to provision. They want the flexibility to move that application around. This particular one is a learning application or a finance application, wherever they want, as flexible as they want. So that's something that's new and different than we've seen in the past. And we're billing it not on an annual basis, but you can buy it by the hour. You could buy it by the day. You could buy it by the week. It's a cloud application for the network. Mm-hmm. And we think it's one of the first in the world.
Mm-hmm. So I think one thing they can do, get more involved in software. They have to hire new the way software is designed today is very, very short development cycles, not long 18-month projects with waterfall diagrams. It's very, very quick innovation of these small, and fortunately services lends itself to that model. You have these small discrete services that can be plugged together to create these different value propositions.
And that's exactly how we did, exactly the way you described it. It's very quick, it's very fast now.
I think some of the fastest folks that I've seen are some of the co-location providers are probably doing it faster than others because they're able to leverage the fact that they have so many enterprises and even cloud providers using their infrastructure. So the more that I think that we can do as an industry to leverage our infrastructure and start to, be almost a colo for our customers, it's going to drive automatically that modernization because your customers need it.
Is there a forum for the hardware? Is there a forum to bring this together? I'm sorry, I'm just...
Yeah, no. I mean, I think a lot of the folks in the room are like, where can we sort of share these sorts of things?
Well, I think it's also to look for vendors that have the kind of trusted advisor capability with you.
Of which, of course, HP does.
Yeah, I'm very hesitant to ever be a company commercial, but I think that it goes two ways. One is that you need to find partners that are going to do that for you, but the other thing I would say to you is that if you don't have a professional services capability today, you should be thinking about that too, completely separately from your technology and your infrastructure, because your customers increasingly want someone to help them on this journey. So it's got to go both directions. So you need to gain both that capability of how do you put yourself on that journey working with your trusted advisors, and then how do you become that role for your customers? Because whether it's an SMB up to enterprise, everybody wants that services support. It's a very different relationship.
Not to mention, I think that's something that companies find they get paid for. I mean, HP went through one of these transformations where the stuff that it was selling was increasingly commoditized, and one way to increase value was to say, we'll sell you the box, but we'll sell you the box and show you how to make that box make money for you.
Right.
And there's an opportunity, what I hear you saying is there's an opportunity for your customers, the service providers.
It's the sell to, sell through model, right? Is that you can both, we're selling to you, but we can also sell through you, or you take what you are doing with that vendor and also then providing that.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't also ask you guys, security, privacy, we're hearing a ton about that. How much of your time and energy do you expect to get sort of sucked into the security question, and how much value do you expect to get out of it? Is it something where it's going to take up 30% of your time, but you think you'll be able to get people to pay for that time, or is it something that the industry is going to spend a lot of time on and not get value for?
Well, I think it's a minimal expectation. I think it's just, I don't think you can equate price and value on that particular one. And as we said earlier, it's no one will ever claim, I don't care who you are, that you're totally foolproof in terms of security issues, but it's an expectation certainly from a customer perspective, and it's a constant. It's constant. You're always looking for the next thing, whatever it's software, hardware, whatever, to continually improve that.
And the cyber attacks are getting really good. So if you think about it from a co-evolution sense or whatever, that their technology is evolving so fast and needs the countermeasures that the service providers have to be able to develop just as quickly. So I think that as more and more recognition comes in of the real financial impact that breaches are causing companies will pay. They will certainly pay not to have that happen to them.
Yeah. I think also, one thing that I talk about a lot is look at the business model of the organization you're working with. If the business model of the cloud computing vendor or that organization is to make money off information from its customers, so they're monetizing the information from those customers, chances are privacy and security are not the biggest concern. But if your model is making money off the customers in which the data is being held, then obviously security and privacy are of your utmost concern. So it does make sense to look at just the business model of that company that you're working with.
And it's not a ubiquitous answer. It's going to be different, especially in Asia, in each country that you're in. They'll have different laws, different security levels. China's certainly different.
Talk a little bit about that, because I think geography, I came into this discussion, one of the things that strikes my mind is there's a lot of capabilities that the folks in this room and you guys can deliver to make your network better prioritize certain data that in the US, for example, net neutrality says you can't actually prioritize those data.
Right.
Talk a little bit, Carl, about how geography matters, and then also like to hear
It
from
matters
you
in a
guys.
couple of ways. One, I was with a large U.S. customer back in the summer, and they had what I would consider a fairly simple issue getting something, and this is Fortune 500, something simple they couldn't get done in China. And because we have a joint venture there, we got a lot of good relations, we got it done very quickly for them. And I was amazed because I would have thought, as big as they are, they had all the resources available, but they just couldn't get this. It was a simple server. They couldn't get it across the border into China. And then you go from country to country. You have to deal with the different legal issues. And I think there's an impression that you can open up your network to anybody at any time. It's not true. There has to be a legal warrant. There has to be responsibility on both sides on how the data is going to be used, and it's not open in the sense of OpenStack in terms of what information. And in China, you can't move any proprietary or any individual information outside the country. So that changes things if you're trying to sell something. And so there's a lot of different things that happen. And one of the impressions that I've seen in Asia from Western companies is that Asia is the same. It's homogeneous. It's not. And Thailand's different than doing something in Singapore or Hong Kong or whatever. And so you've got to have your people. People are actually become really important in getting things done in each of the countries because the network may be ubiquitous, the hardware may be ubiquitous, but the laws and everything else are different in each of those countries.
Not to mention connectivity.
Connectivity
you've got a lot of other things. I mean, we talked about that this morning with the guy from Cook Island. You've got a huge bandwidth differentiation. But you also have the benefit with some emerging countries where they've actually leapfrogged. Where they didn't have the baggage almost of traditional infrastructure, and they've been able to go straight to wireless, straight to fiber to the pillow, and so it really varies. And you could have advantages actually over disadvantages in some cases.
Lou, are you and Margaret, are you guys getting brushback from countries overseas more hesitant? Being from the U.S. used to be a big selling point, but with all that's been going on with the NSA, are people more hesitant to do business?
More about public cloud. I mean, you really don't get a lot of pushback in general. I think the only place that starts to come up is when they're talking about public cloud services and where are the data centers and would you have to turn over my data and things like that. So first of all, you have to talk about the fact that nobody just turns over data, that you do it based on the law and all of those things, and so there's some standard policies that everyone follows. But places like Canada, Germany, there's certain countries where that's hyper vigilant. And then you look at partnerships, you look at ways to leverage infrastructure within those countries. But I think we're going to see kind of this two-edged sword where we see increasingly governments trying to lock down and create more data sovereignty, and businesses and consumers, wanting to push it open. And so we've started seeing that tension. Security is part of that, but I think we're going to continue to see that. And at the end of the day, the consumer is going to win out. Look at how hard it is for people to try to stop Twitter in Syria or whatever. I mean, there's a certain level of demand, going back to your very first statement, that just becomes a rolling snowball.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see, data sovereignty issues are paramount. It's one of the things I think that's stopping us from seeing one or two large global cloud providers happen, because data is actually controlled by, has to be resided in the country. Their laws are different there. So I think we'll see the emergence of some interesting new technologies around being able to tag data so that you really know where it's been, where it's transited, and everything else, which again, people then have requirements that you have to be able to audit where the data actually
That's a huge
has
opportunity. Data tagging and classification, I think, are going to be huge growth areas.
I would agree.
A couple more questions that folks have sent in. Can you talk a little bit about how, we've talked very broadly across industry, we touched a little bit on geography. How is this different across industries, and are there industries that are particularly ahead? Obviously you have some heavily regulated ones like medical and finance, but what about education and energy? Are there some examples of some industries that you see really leading this?
I actually think it's getting more complex. You have, the desire on most of our, 20-year-olds today to share all of their information publicly, and it's just part of the way that they are viewing the world. And then you have privacy concerns around that wants to push it the other way. You have in education, we're seeing that university courseware now is available everywhere in the world. So I think we're the banks are going one way, and sort of the rest of the society, I think, is actually going in an opposite direction. Towards
so I
much
hear
more
generationally too, like we've talked about geographically in industry, but how important is it going to be that, 10 10 years from now, hopefully sooner, there's going to be, we're all going to be, they're going to yank us all off, and they're going to put in 20-somethings who've never grown up with these expectations of privacy and who have grown up with these always available services. Are they?
The whole privacy thing and the whole consumer thing and how it's, the younger generation is more open to it. My son was a prosecutor in the Air Force, and the number one tool they used on most cases was Facebook. Somebody would say, I was there. Nah, that's not what it says here.
Yeah.
Off to whatever. Right. And so the whole privacy thing, I think it is a generational thing, and it's a whole way, it's a whole other way of looking at
so Scott
things
McNeely's Scott McNeely's quote when I was at Sun and actually running Sun's infrastructure and had to defend it, which was, you have no privacy, get over it.
Yeah, get over it.
And I think it was actually the right statement.
Well,
what you need is then as a response. So get over the fact that you have ultimate privacy. Yeah. What you have to be able to say is privacy around what? And that's where I think from the medical establishments and things like that, we're going to see back to data tagging and everything else. Certain information we want to be able to keep secure. We want to keep it encrypted. We want to know where it's been. Other information we want to be widely dispersed and available for everybody.
And kind of doing that with access controls. When you were talking, I was thinking of network security 101, which your default is they're evil, until they're proven innocent. And I think that we need to continue to kind of look at that as we build out.
And there is no more perimeter. So perimeter security is done.
Right.
It just doesn't exist anymore. People walk in and out of their buildings with their.
I can't believe you're even having to say that.
Well,
but people still think that they can protect.
There is
protect
no perimeter.
things by having a perimeter.
Get over it.
It seems to me that the single biggest revolution, in our lifetimes has been this mobile computing. We all have this incredible power, and yet for businesses, I think, and we were talking about this beforehand. They're basically, the most forward-thinking are just figuring out how to at least keep those secure. What is it going to mean that every worker has this, and how long is it going to be before businesses are able to take advantage of the fact that we all have these? And is there an opportunity for the folks in this room to create services that benefit from the fact that every worker has this?
Well, I think there's two stages to that. One is that businesses, I think, in 2014 are finally getting their head out of the sand and realizing that the rogue devices, rogue clouds, or shadow IT, whatever we want to call it, is there. They can't ignore it anymore because the past couple of years, if you ask them, are you doing cloud computing solutions? They say no. Oh, do you have your employees using cloud-based applications and services? Oh yeah. So you have cloud in your office.
Well, and even if they didn't, there was probably a team collaborating on Dropbox.
How many of your developers are using a cloud-based platform to build applications that, by the way, somehow have ended up on your enterprise network? So you kind of have that whole movement where they've got to get more control. They've got to decide what side of the fence they're going to be on. And then the other side you're talking about is absolutely everybody can be providing the infrastructure and the platform or the environment to allow easy development of these applications, these mobile applications, the whole gamification, because that's what employees want to use.
And it strikes me, for the service providers of the world, there's an opportunity. Those businesses, still, they can monetize at a rate that's going to be tough if you've just got to charge a consumer per gigabyte.
Well, if you don't want your employees bringing in, file sharing and collaboration, consumer-based apps, you've got to give them the ability to use a similar application that is delivered by the enterprise.
I think Gary's itching to get in. Do you have services like that?
No, we don't have services exactly like that, but certainly enabling our customers is the key for us, because the more they use, the more bandwidth they consume, the more whatever. We all know prices continue to decline, but by the same token, usage continues to climb. What's every cell tower need? It needs a piece of fiber. It doesn't want a piece of copper. It wants a piece of fiber. And eventually that piece of fiber wants another piece of fiber. So it's all good.
It's a network
for us. That's right. What's that?
It's a network effect.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Well, I'm sure we could keep going for
no, not really,
a long time. Or we've actually shared all of our insights. So I want to thank Carl, Lou, and Margaret for a great discussion, and hopefully we'll continue it in the hallways and stuff, and bug these guys in the hallway on how to make your businesses better.
Thank you much.
Great.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed Tuesday's keynotes, executive insight roundtables, topical sessions, and the Tuesday evening reception sponsored by PTC'14 Diamond sponsor, Tata Communications. Join us on Wednesday for the last of the executive insight roundtables and keynotes. PTC also invites all full, network, and Wednesday-only registrants to attend the closing lunch and award ceremony. PTC'14 is made possible in part by the generosity of the PTC'14 sponsors. Mahalo to each of the PTC'14 bronze sponsors. Thank you for all of your support. Thanks for watching PTC TV. Be sure to tune in again tomorrow. Until then, aloha. PTC TV is brought to you by PTC'14 Platinum sponsor Equinix. Mahalo Equinix. Thank you for sponsoring PTC TV.